purpose, just so we feel really stupid, yeah. Oh,
Hello. I didn't know they put you over here.
Musical chairs.
Hey, no, you're welcome to sit by me. They just move everybody around.
well, I'm just feeling like Typhoid Mary over here.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we're getting in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, how are you doing?
So proud. Call to meeting the Planning and Zoning Commission for Monday, June 14th, 2021. Roll call, please.
Mark Hydrus. Here. Mark Kleesner. Mark Piontek.
Here.
Tom Holdmeyer.
Here.
Sandy Lucy.
Here.
John Borgman.
Here.
Chuck Watson.
Here?
Samantha Cerruti Wacker.
Here.
Carolyn Witt.
Here.
Sal Maniaci.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the May 10th, 2021 meeting.
Great.
Motion to approve.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Moving on to item number 3, file number 210601. The applicant is requesting approval of a special use permit at 1498 High Street. Sal?
Yes, so this is a pretty straightforward request for a roadside stand permit at the Iron Spike Train Museum on High Street at the corner of High Street and Highway 100. This property is zoned C2 general commercial, so there's no problem with the commercial use being proposed there. The applicant actually already currently has a temporary roadside stand permit to operate there, but our code only allows that 10 times in one calendar year, and anytime more than that, you have to come in for a special use permit to make sure that it's not going to cause any issues to the parking lot, fire lanes, that kind of thing. The proposed request here is directly in the corner along the highway. It is not blocking any fire lanes, and as you can tell from the old aerial, with this being the old Toyota dealership, they are overparked for the code for the museum, so there's no issue with parking there. So we recommend approval of the request tonight.
Questions or comments by board members?
Sal, do you know how long he's been operating? Because I know he's been there the last 2 Sundays.
The applicant will be able to answer that for you.
Okay?
Can you come up to the podium for the recording?
Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jan Elfrink with Jan's Tamales. Sorry. I've been operating for about 3 years.
And how long at this site?
Oh, at this site, since May?
Okay. I just was concerned that we might be running into the 10 maximum by the time this would get approved, I guess.
Well, it goes to council next Monday, so
Okay.
hopefully we should be good.
So we'd be okay?
Yep.
Okay, very good.
Is this your only location for business, or do you have
No,
other
I
locations?
I do a pop-up food stand. I have temporary permits in other locations, and I go to the Union Farmers Market, Washington Farmers Market, shop around the corner. I think that's it.
Yeah. So the temporary permits are approved actually from the city clerk's office. So Sherry she's been working with Sherry on the numbers at each location. And Sherry was the one who said, hey, we got to get this on there. So I know we're getting close, but I don't think we're to the point yet, so.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience that would like to comment on this? Any other comments by board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? So move. Moving on to item number 4, discussion items, downtown mixed-use overlay district.
Yeah, you can go.
Yeah, you can go.
Thank you to everybody.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Did you bring any tamales with you?
She shouldn't be bribing the commission.
Next week.
Well, we would buy them.
Sal, you want,
Heard, yeah.
Yes,
Over
so-
for the downtown mixed-use overlay district?
Yeah, so this is continuing our discussion from last month, that we kind of discussed the opportunity to do an overlay district for basically a C3 overlay that would expand our C3 zoning into a boundary that we would almost, the intent of this code, and I wrote it in your packet, I added an intent and purpose to this new section of code to basically set a boundary for downtown development and growth. As we know, we had an application where, and historically we have tried not to approve C3 zoning request unless it was contingent with other C3. There was 2 cases we did not do that, and so we already had a precedent where we weren't necessarily following that non-written rule. And so we thought this would be a good time to actually set an overlay district where someone were to come in with a mixed use, 0 lot line request that is appropriate for the downtown district, that we can say, hey, look, this is the boundaries that our zoning, our planning and zoning commission, that our code has set, and then that way it draws an actual red line to tell people that this is kind of the delineation of the downtown district. So this is a little bit wider than what we saw last month. I know we all talked about getting down to Fifth Street because the C2 overlay already gets down to that area to allow mixed use and has shorter setbacks. And if you looked at historically what was up and down Fifth Street, especially at Fifth and Jefferson, the style and the construction of what used to be there is exactly what you would see on Main and Elm. Shared walls, 0 lot line, that kind of thing. And so if you were really wanted to come back, if someone wanted to come in and redevelop anything in this, what we delineated in this 4 blocks along Fifth, that, this development code would now allow that. So what you see here is, obviously what's in the packet is longer than this, but this is the only, these are the only sections that are really different. The intent and purpose is written differently than our C3 because I wanted to add the definition of why we were doing this outside of what we have currently, and actually show that it may be R3 right now, it may be, there's some C1s in there, but that way we can show this is the delineated area that you can do this type of development. The rest of it is exactly the same of the C3, the same uses, the same development code, building, fire, everything that have to go through that. This boundary, I wrote that, it's very confusing if you just read it out as one long run-on sentence because it's not just square blocks. It kind of, as you can see on the western side, cuts down. So I wrote that as clear as I could. But what we'll probably do is just do an attachment to the code to make it a lot easier so someone doesn't have to sit there and try and read that and figure out if they're in it or not. And then lastly, I did add this one sentence in bullet number 1. This is something that downtown, as part of the Main Street program and Downtown Inc., has discussed for a long time. I know it's been discussed at council as long as 10 years ago, and it never went through, but I thought at this point I can throw it in there as a draft, we can discuss it and possibly pull it out. But on Main and Elm, this is the only area, it has always been the intention to not allow residential uses on the street level. We want to encourage office, commercial uses on that, and not to say you can't have residential, obviously, but to encourage them to be on the top level. And so the way that this one bullet point is written is to not allow residential uses on the street level on Main and on Main from Cedar to Jefferson, and on Elm from Front to Fourth. So that would just basically be in this area on Main, and then on Cedar or on Elm, not all the way to the full district, but just from, because there's a single family here, but here down, there are not, I think right now, there are currently not any residences. There have been on Main here and there. I know there was an article about someone buying something on Main for residential, which has kind of spurred the conversation with downtown. So it hasn't necessarily been an issue, but we could write it into the code. I wanted to throw that out there. I understand this is a little bit more touchy because it is removing uses from property owners that they currently do have the ability to do. And I know that is not always the most popular thing. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as an option. If we don't want to do that and just have it match C3 like we have it, all I got to do is take out that number 1 and that is it, so.
I mean, my thought, Sal, would be to take it out, just simply because, I mean, I think, obviously, we could still do it with a special use permit, but I think the point is to keep downtown, this area full and vibrant and occupied and not have dark fronts, whether
Correct.
that be somebody living there or somebody, you know, having an office there. So, I mean, my thought would be remove it, and, you know, if it becomes an issue in the future, I guess we can address it, but I don't see the harm in having a mix of residences and businesses.
Yeah, and I concur, you know, I don't,
I mean, even the example of that house across the street up there by originally it was residential, and then everything got changed over to commercial up there, and then it took whatever to get the thing changed back to residential up there and stuff, you know.
yeah.
Across from the-
And again, the whole point of this was not to make anything more restrictive, so I understand it's a little counterintuitive, but that has been, we tell people often whenever they, or when they get a permit in either of those blocks, that we discourage the residential uses, and it hasn't really come up, except for this possibility of one time, but even then, I think that this building that sold on Main, I think is still gonna be mixed use, so, I just wanted to throw that as an option. I know I spoke to the mayor about it beforehand as well, and we talked about maybe removing it, but just, I wanted it to be a discussion point, so.
I think we want to encourage
Any investment?
any investment in
Yeah.
downtown. And again, it makes it more restrictive.
Yeah.
Really, in essence.
Absolutely.
You know.
And again, I think this is it's a point in the Main Street system that, you know, then they give us these guidelines that they encourage you to have this in your code. So that's where the idea came from, but it has not been an issue, so it's almost like you're writing a rule for something that hasn't come up yet, so.
And I mean, I almost think that we need to make it so, you know, let it evolve. I mean, I think as we become, you know, as we continue with a vibrant downtown, I think we want to be flexible within reason and encourage that.
Downtown has certainly changed in the last 20 years, you know, so,
Yeah.
the last 10, so.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, Sal, why did we jump across Fifth Street and include Lutheran school there?
Well, I just did anything that, the way it's written is any property that actually touches Fifth Street. So I did include both sides, but that could easily be the north side only. Yeah, because you're right, like on that section of Cedar here, I didn't do both sides. You know, it's strictly down the street. And on Fifth, historically, there were some structures on both sides of the street that had that zero lot line. But you're absolutely right. We could just do on the north side of Fifth.
As I
that area.
recall, when we were talking about it last time, I think it came up when we were thinking about the corner of Fifth and Jefferson specifically, thinking about, you know, what that used to look like historically with, you know, more buildings and more stuff. And I don't know, I like the boundary personally, just to give some flexibility.
Well, and it would actually bring the coffee shop, this building here, into conformance. Right now, it's technically grandfathered as a zero lot line when it would not be permitted today in our current zoning code. So there are some uses there that are grandfathered in. This would bring them in. Lutheran is not. Lutheran, well, they may, on their western boundary, they may be. But again, some of these, who knows what they would ever sell or redevelop. You know, same, I included like the Borgia Field, Borgia Grade School. But it has the opportunity there that we wouldn't have to go through zoning hoops. They would still obviously have to go through all the building and inspections and fire and all that, but they wouldn't have to get it rezoned.
Well, I think having it both sides of the street, I mean, it'd just be, you know, when you're going down the street, you're able to have conformity there and stuff a lot easier and stuff for whatever people are gonna be looking at and stuff down the road.
I think just kind of expanding that ability to have the downtown feel and, you know, the historic
Right.
development might be
Yeah.
nice.
And I think it's on the north side, but like an example, we said that with Purcell possibly becoming on the market there, and that lot having a lot of open space currently, I could potentially, you know, again, no one's reached out, but I could potentially see a development that would utilize moving the building up to Fifth Street and maybe putting something behind it.
So
you know,
if you
putting
did
parking.
that, would it be required to have a zero lot line, or could you still do things?
Oh.
Does that become a requirement,
No.
or does it just allow
It
it?
just allows it. So yeah, we didn't require, the setbacks are, even in all the other districts, the setbacks are a minimum. You can go push it back if you want, so. Except, I will say, in the Fifth Street overlay, or the C2 overlay, that does require 10 feet because they wanted, the whole idea was to make that historically have the parking in the back, remove the strip malls kind of feel, because we were having more issues with parking in the front. So that C2, or the C2 overlay along Fifth actually does require a 10-foot setback. We haven't had anything new build since the oral surgery center. That's why actually they're built up to the street
They have a little yard there.
because of that requirement. So that's the only one.
So 10-foot setback from the sidewalk or from the,
From the right-of-way, but yeah, it would be the
right-of-way.
sidewalk, yep.
But then to the extent that this, it changes that, then it would become the 0,
Only in this area,
right,
correct.
in this part of it.
Correct.
So my next question is, just using the school again
Yep.
and the church there, is that going to affect them if we don't use their whole property line?
Well, it would actually, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, it would actually follow the parcel line, correct? So even though Lutheran has all the way down to
Because you got that
Sixth
section
Street.
behind them.
Yeah.
You know,
Because it follows the parcel line, correct? Or is it how we written?
They actually have the option to petition to have it extended through their entire parcel.
okay. You know what I'm saying, Mark? First, I feel like everybody's whole property ought to be not chopped in half.
Because whenever we would update it on our zoning map, we don't split properties on zoning. It would, the color for the overlay would just follow the whole parcel.
So really what we're adding in the overlay is just the residential option, correct?
And the 0 lot line.
And changing,
zero lot.
Yeah,
that.
allowing, really more than anything, it's the mixed-use option.
Mixed use
Yeah.
option, right, right.
Because some of them are currently residential, the multifamily, some of them are C1. Here, I pulled it up. So I think some good examples here, especially in this area. So this darker maroon is C1 right on the border, and then there's a lot here that's R3. A lot of these uses are currently the same. They already have mixed use, or they have apartments, or they have single family, and this would allow that overlay district where they don't have to worry about coming in and rezoning. We're saying, hey, look, this is the boundary of that, we're cleaning that up. Because it really makes no sense why just this little grouping is C1. C1 is more restrictive. I don't think if there was any use that requested to go there, that would request to go 3 blocks north, that we would say, no, that area needs to be neighborhood commercial. You know what I mean? It's basically saying if what you can do down here on Main Street, you should be able to do here as well.
Any other questions, comments?
Carolyn, how do you see this interplaying with, what the historic preservation is doing?
I really like the fact that it is very limited to the existing downtown. It's just expanding a minimal amount. And I know, historically, we're very defensive about the C3, but at the same time, I think this is a winning proposition because downtown Washington is currently undertaking discussion of expanding their definition of downtown to expand more or less along these lines, that the idea that the historic district isn't all historic, but it's still growing. I mean, it has, especially economically, when you have housing or businesses, all of this has expanded the definition of what we consider our downtown area. So I don't think there'd be any problem with, and also from a historic standpoint.
Yeah, so actually the design review that our code requires you to get a design permit certificate before you build is actually even wider than what we're proposing, because obviously there's a design review area, whether you're in a national district or not, and then there's our 5 actual registered districts. They all have to go through that. Our design review area actually extends past 6th Street. So any homes, anything there actually does have to already go through that design review. So I think there could be an argument that some of those people, it's like, you're considering me historic or making me go through historic preservation, but you're not considering me in the downtown zoning. So this would at least extend that to 5th Street. Market, and then obviously meander.
Well, and I would also like to jump in and just address I cannot speak for downtown Washington because I know they really are making a concerted effort to work on development of second-floor housing, but I don't think anybody would have any problem with this because I think, the previous thing we were discussing about because that particular area doesn't lend itself really to residential. I mean, that thing with the modern auto building is the first thing that's come up that I know of that is basically the first floor. And so I don't think they would. I think they have different priorities. They would rather fight to change an ordinance that you can't paint your brick building in the downtown area without getting a mandatory compliance. So I think they have a tendency to marshal their forces and go for what they think is more, and I think that is more important than what we're looking at here. So
Aesthetics versus use.
Right. So I really don't think
Yeah.
you would get any back. I'm sorry?
No, I'm just thinking about some stuff that's happened down there that's like,
Yes.
how did that
yes,
happen?
Yes. Overnight.
I ran down the street one Saturday and said, what are you doing?
I know. It was like overnight.
painting.
It grew. Well, I'm glad it wasn't purple. But anyway, so I just wanted to put that in from that standpoint, that I think if you want to take it out, that I don't think you'll have any grief.
No, yeah, and I didn't talk to the downtown board about it, but we had conversations with Tyler King, and kind of the same feeling is that it hasn't become an issue, and they, like Carolyn said, they are already making, they have their Economic Vitality Committee that I actually sit on is making a concerted effort to try and encourage upstairs residential in other situations where they're connecting them with resources rather than actually worrying about the zoning side of it.
Yeah, and it's not a stick. It's the carrot. How can we help you do this? We have this low-interest loan thing that they can apply for. And, you want to encourage positive instead of do this or else, we don't want to go there, so.
Which is kind of how the historic preservation has worked through the years,
Yes, and it's been pretty successful. I mean, there are a few losing propositions that we've lost.
Right.
But that's, you win some, you lose some.
Right.
And,
I think that's
we
good.
try and draw a line in the sand, but the sand blows in the wind, and you try and,
That's pretty heavy.
I know.
That's too heavy for this.
The carrot, the stick.
Never ask me a question, it can be very dangerous.
I don't know why you're always holding a stick, though. I don't know.
Yeah, right, yeah. It was that, return your book or else.
So Sal, when we look at redoing the zoning codes again, would this be something that we would want to look at and maybe making a different zoning code that instead of having overlays in locations,
Well,
or?
The reason I wanted to do an overlay is because an overlay district, you can cover multiple zonings.
Right.
And actually, you don't have to go individually to these property owners and say, hey, we're going to sign off on a rezoning. I think that was the easiest way to do it, because even if we created its own C5, whatever, that for our downtown district, I guess that it is an option to redo all of it, but I think currently having multiple zonings on there without having to go to each property owner, this overlay district can cover the properties that are R3, the C1, the C3.
Because I know it would cover some of the overlay on C2,
Yes.
so that would change then.
Yeah,
correct?
and all it does from C2 overlay to this new overlay is goes from 10 foot to 0, yeah, and then multifamily, because right now the C2 is 1 family and 2 family. Well, we're in C3, you can have multifamily.
Any other questions or comments of Sal for the board?
So,
Anyone in the audience?
Were you going to say something?
I was going to just ask, I'll wait for the audience comment and then I'll
Okay.
ask my question.
Sorry.
You talked to,
Good evening, commission members.
Good evening.
Good to be back. Samantha, I think it's sad, but I don't think I've seen you since I left planning and zoning. I must live a sheltered life or something.
Oh,
Who are you?
Yeah, exactly. Good point. My name is Mark Scornia, Emergency Management Director, 6 Creekside Place. Yes, for the introduction. But yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I come before you tonight, as a safety official for the city. I'm concerned about a couple of things, but primarily the zero lot line expansion and the potential to create hazards in the form of sight distance in these areas. So the traffic committee has already added one 4-way stop downtown, and that's at the Main and Market. Originally there was only one zero lot line building there, and it really wasn't much of a hazard but we've added 3 zero lot line, haven't added 2 more. There's 3 zero lot line corners there now. And that did create a sight distance problem. The traffic committee was tasked with taking a look at that. We went down, looked at it, and agreed, yes, there definitely was a sight distance problem. And now traffic committee has recommended, and there has been a 4-way stop installed there. Now, I'm not going to argue for a moment that the buildings that have been added are absolutely beautiful and a wonderful addition to town, because, they are. There's no doubt. But nonetheless, there's a sight distance problem that exists there, and I'm a little bit concerned about creating, a lot of intersections with 4-way stops. Town had a lot of those years ago, and a lot of those have been removed. So, I'm concerned about that.
Can I ask you, not to throw you off too much, but is there a positive perhaps to having the stop signs, maybe some traffic calming effect?
There's evidence to that, yes. It will calm traffic, but I think people don't like to go and make a stop every block or every 2 blocks.
And I guess then I'm going to ask you a question again, though. As downtown becomes bigger and there's more foot traffic and more stuff going on, is it beneficial then to perhaps have traffic be a bit calmer in that area?
There is that possibility, but all these things depend on, actually the police department primarily does the surveys on them. They'll look at accidents, they'll look at speeds, sight distance problems. They have a number of things they look at to recommend stops.
Sure.
So, it's probably a matter of more inconvenience. Are 4-way stop signs safer? Yeah, they probably are, as long as people don't run them. But, obviously people don't like stopping all the time. They like to go. So, but great question. I like it. When the downtown zoning district was created, I'm certain the existing limitation for those zero lot lines was to grandfather existing buildings that were in there. So in case there was damage to the building, it could be rebuilt in the exact location. And rebuilt right there. But similarly, I also believe that when that was created, those who created that district looked at limiting that area because they could see there was more desirous uses and more open space. I believe that's the reason there was a limitation there, not just to make it available all over. The deliberation you're making is going to be obviously a 100-plus year decision. It's a lot like other zoning decisions you make, that the zoning goes with that property in perpetuity. But in this instance, this is not a decision that goes away when there's property changes or building changes, or even if someone comes along and requests a zoning change. The building's already there. Look at the age of the buildings downtown, 100-plus years old. So when it's there, it's there. There's no change now. So that's going to give you limitations to any widening of sidewalks or any widening of, well, maybe not widening of sidewalks, but any significant street and sidewalk improvements. You're not going to be widening streets and making big improvements to the area. You're locked. So, long-term decision. I don't recall expansion of zero lot lines in the 2013 comprehensive plan, but what is mentioned in there, I went and looked a little bit, and the focus groups pointed out what they liked and what they don't like when they were interviewed. So the best things about streets for the transportation group was they liked wide streets with curb and gutter, no parking meters, sidewalks, good thing, cleanliness, street lights, all those sort of things. The dislike, the worst streets in town, they determined were the narrowest and the older parts of town. Parking on both sides of heavily traveled streets, bump outs on Jefferson mentioned many times.
That was a hot topic back in
Yeah,
2012,
It
2013.
Yep, still is. I'll tell you, it's still a hot topic.
It has a calming effect, though.
Right, we create economic development for our tire purveyors.
When you run over, it definitely slows you down. No doubt about it. Least like Jefferson Street, patch streets, fewer bump outs. Least like Jefferson Street's bump outs. Streets are not wide enough for bump outs. So there's a lot of common themes, in those focus groups, from back.
And Mark, would you agree that, there's been, I know the last time that we were here, we talked about it's time to gear up for another review of the comp plan that's going to be up for change.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's going to be some things, although I can tell you there's going to be a lot of those things that are going to be very similar.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But obviously our downtown looks a lot different now than it did at that point.
Without a doubt. There's been big improvements, and, a lot of what the comprehensive plan talks about is what committees feed the comprehensive plan. To me, that's sort of one of the shortfalls. I would much rather have somebody from outside come in and look and say, this is what I recommend. But I think one of the shortfalls of a comprehensive plan is sometimes they pay too much attention to what the committees are feeding them instead of really making a recommendation. They're listening to what somebody wants in the comprehensive plan, if you will.
Yeah, but at the same time, there was a lot of local input into that. It wasn't just a committee that did it.
Yep.
I was on one of those, and there was a very diverse group.
I think a lot of the people were from right outside of town.
Yeah.
There was a situation back then that.
Yeah, what was that?
Annexation. Yeah. Oh, we had a lot. Yes, we did have a lot of participation from people
We had
that
great
were not necessarily stakeholders or.
Exactly.
Yep,
City.
there was lots, and that's what I'm reading you here.
And they didn't, none of them
Those
liked
plans from
bump
those
outs.
focus groups. So you're right, Carolyn, but it's a double-edged sword. They're fed information, but there's
Right.
focus groups.
But at the same time, somebody coming in, that raises a lot of hackles, because, I've been here over 40 years, and I'm still not a native.
Yep.
So I'll keep my mouth shut,
But I'll listen. I'll listen
Oh,
to
you're
what
very
somebody
kind,
says.
but you're right, it's still,
I may not adopt it, but
well,
I'll
and I've been
listen.
here long enough, I'm suspicious. I don't want those people coming in and telling me what to do.
We're including Market Street and Fifth Street for street traffic. And so you have one block on Main, Third, to Market. I'm just trying to get how many streets we're talking about here.
What
that-
you're adding?
Yes, how big.
That are in addition?
Yeah, because Market has a problem all the way up.
Right. Yep.
You got the house on the corner, you got
it's narrow the whole way.
apartments on the corner.
Yep.
Well, I
That
think-
Market and Third has always been
Yeah.
a problem.
I mean, I think the character of Market Street is changing. I mean, it's not necessarily the thoroughfare to the river anymore. You know, it's.
Well, that construction kind
It's
of.
not, but I mean, in terms of, you know, historically, you know,
Okay.
what it, maybe, you know, 150 years ago, you know, or whatever,
Maybe, and
it's
I can
different.
tell you as an East Ender, 3rd Street, hang a right on Market when you're gonna go down.
Oh, I know. Hey, I grew up on the east end of town. I know. So,
But that construction, that closed streets for a while.
Yep.
People go different directions.
But as soon as it opened back up, they're back down that same street.
Yep.
but it's, you know, it's good to see people not flying down Market Street with the stop sign.
Yep. So, you know, Fifth and Jeff was mentioned a little bit ago. I mean, when we examine Fifth and Jeff, you have one zero lot line property, which, as Sal pointed, you know, it's grandfathered in. It's there. It's going to be there a long time, most likely. And then the other intersection, you have a very closely placed utility pole on the corner in front on Ersal Tire, which makes making a right-hand turn
Tough.
north on Jeff difficult. So if you would imagine, you know, and this is in the proposal, imagine Fifth and Jeff with all 4 corners zero lot line.
I really think that's true, but I can't see, Andy's development is definitely an issue. I agree. But at the same time, I don't see that happening in the future, really, that people are going to choose to do that.
I mean, in fairness, Carol, I mean, who envisioned everything that's
I know,
happened? though?
I know,
mean,
I know.
I mean, you have a point, Mark, that we can envision, but then, I mean, I guess my question would be, what is the likelihood that anybody's going to widen streets in the downtown area? I mean, that's not likely
Not.
not in this lifetime.
No.
I
Well,
mean,
you'd have to get rid of buildings.
so,
But, yeah, you know, my point is, and you hit it right on the head. You know, like I said earlier, it's a 100-year decision. And what we do, just like the zoning, you make decisions on every month. That goes with that property in perpetuity.
Yes,
So,
but
you know,
at the
it's
same
sort of
time,
the
in my
same thing.
lifetime, we have reviewed the zoning ordinances fairly recently. And we threw out a lot, and we brought a lot of new ones in,
Yep.
right?
But
So
once the building.
I don't know if perpetuity is really the correct phrase. I mean,
well, theoretically, but it's
yeah,
not,
but
you know.
but we do review
things
because
evolve.
things change with time.
But once a building's built,
Yeah, but
You're locked.
that doesn't mean that well, anyway, I'm not gonna,
okay. Yep, I think we both recognize each other's points.
right.
So, you know, I'd like to recommend that any future buildings that are built on property lines require a special use permit, even in the existing downtown district. I believe the special use permits have developed a bad reputation when basically all they're doing is calling attention to whatever is going on at that particular property can have a, you know, serious impact to that area. So I think based on the development we've seen in downtown, that's marvelous and beautiful and just is nothing but fantastic for the city. I believe that if a developer, you know, could easily make a sell on a special use permit if it's appropriate for the area versus inappropriate. So just a consideration. So it's not germane to this conversation, but I did find interesting the conversation on overlays. And, you know, over the years, I understand overlays, but at the same time, they get a little confusing. You know, I think even Sal was having a little difficulty there with, okay, what's permitted in this overlay, what's permitted in that overlay versus, you know, I think maybe sometimes, you know, an overlay can allow something that wasn't permitted in the code. You know, that we're just putting an overlay on something to give permission to something. But that's really not totally germane to that, my true purpose for being here. So, in conclusion, I believe that the zero lot lines have been a wonderful addition to Washington. And I want to thank the developers who have done them for their vision and commitment to the allure of Washington. questions of me?
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for your consideration, folks.
Thank you.
Want to say anything?
Good evening, Tim Frankenberg, Fire Chief. I'm an engineer by education and employment, so when we talk about engineering problems in or problems out, I have some concern with zero setbacks, particular intersections. This particular intersection, I've had a number of near misses at on emergency responses, and so the 5th and Jefferson intersection, the more you make intersections compacted, particularly in a thoroughfare that's not regulated with stop signs or some sort of stop measure, you're creating safety hazards. To your point of stop signs, what it actually does is create, you were asking Mark the question, one of the issues with the downside of the stop sign is without having a continuous traffic flow, when you have an emergency response, you get backed up in both directions, you can't get through. And with the shoulders filled up in the narrow streets, you can't necessarily navigate through that. So as far as the zero lot lines, I don't have a problem with the zero lot lines. It's the zero setback on the intersections is where I have concern. Looking at it from a risk perspective, and that's how my engineering brain, fire protection engineering brain works, I look at risk. The downtown is the most significant risk that we manage. So when we look at this portion of our city, this is the part that gives me the most grief because it's the part that when we look at a fire spread perspective, it's one of the worst ones we have in our area. Actually, it's the worst one. And so looking at that and the ability for us to get in safely and not only navigate the streets, particularly 5th Street, Jefferson, and Market are the three. The rest of the overlay, I don't really have too much issue with. I don't like the streets down. I don't like the setbacks on Market that was alluded to. I think Andy's done some beautiful things. To your point with Market Street, you know, that used to be the Washington Ready Mix. That used to be the route and the commercial trucks use that route as well. So the more you jam that up and slow things down, it's going to be an impediment when you need to get through there. So you're mentioning the curb bump outs about its traffic calming unless you're driving an emergency vehicle, and it makes it very uncalming sometimes with the bump outs, trying to navigate the turns from time to time. But that would be my concern to the commission is that the zero setback on the intersections. As far as going down the street, I think what they did down on 5th Street with the dental office or oral surgeon makes perfect sense. Doing it in the middle of the block makes perfect sense. However, when you get to these intersections, I think there is some safety concerns that we're allowing engineers to engineer in problems. And to what Mark's point is, those buildings are going to be there a significant amount of time, so that problem is engineered for a lifetime. Any questions?
So when we talk about zero lot lines and zero setback, is it?
It's not zero setback.
It's off your easement.
Yeah, off your easement.
Yeah, it's the same thing essentially.
You may not have side
Yeah,
easements.
it's like this,
Yeah, you
essentially.
may
Yeah.
not have side easements, though, that you can go.
Yeah,
Isn't that the same thing,
no.
kind of, or?
Well, zero lot line and zero setback is the same thing.
Lot line, to me, lot line, setbacks.
So you're saying wall to wall is a zero lot line where you have a shared wall,
And
zero
zero
setback is to
setback.
the street. Yeah,
No,
but
I always,
regardless, this code would allow it to be 0, 0, 0, 0, all on all four sides.
okay.
Now, I will say we have currently in our development code some site triangle requirements for other, like when it comes to signage and other things where it's actually defined. Do we just change it from 20 feet? I think it's 20 feet back, 30?
In residential, it's 30 feet from the corner.
Okay.
And the hypotenuse is your sight line.
So we do have a definition of a sightline triangle. It would be very easy to write into this that any zero lot line at an intersection is subject to site distance approval, like site distance, site triangle stipulations.
Okay, so I'm just, like on Main Street, Jefferson is a thoroughfare, so there's no stop sign. But when you get to, that's a four-way stop at Lafayette in Maine, but we have some parking lots, but then those other two buildings are,
Zero, yeah.
okay. And then you get to Oak, and you have
Zero.
four lot line, four zero lot
Yeah,
lines
0,
there,
0,
right?
0.
With a four-way stop. And then when you get to Elm, you have three
Three.
with a parking lot.
As you
And
come
then
south, you have very similar issues.
Cedar,
We have.
So in the
3.
downtown area, I guess I hadn't thought about where all the stop signs were in downtown. There's a stop sign
Well,
block, right?
and from our perspective, we use fire lanes. So Jefferson's considered a fire lane. That's our main thoroughfare. And then 5th, 3rd, Front, 8th, those are fire lanes because they go across the city. Is that you or is it? Not me. But those are the fire lanes that we use because the streets are wider, they're easier to navigate, plus they get you the most distance from point A to point B across the city.
All right. And I understand that. I just, okay.
And throughout the rest of town, once we leave the downtown district, as Sal was alluding to, and we just talked about last traffic committee meeting, that you take, there's a little discussion whether it's the back of the curb versus the property line, but essentially it's the back of the curb.
Right.
Give the folks as much as possible.
Okay.
Back of the curb, 30 foot each way on the corner. The hypotenuse is the sight line.
Don't quote man.
So Sal, could we include that in this overlay district?
Yeah,
For the
absolutely.
intersection?
So I think you could do either one where the traffic or the city engineer has to approve that the site triangle has been met, or, because there are examples that have it currently, we could make it a special use permit. If you're on an intersection and you want 0 lot line, then it has to be reviewed individually.
Now, Mark or Tim, would there be a specific number of feet back for the site from the intersection?
I would defer to a traffic engineer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I would defer that.
So you're talking about site triangle review, is that the right term?
Yeah.
So I think that makes sense.
That's sort of what
I'm hearing
that's sort of
that.
what I was meaning by a special use permit. See, that'd be the perfect application.
but-
Like if you're down in the middle, oh, go ahead.
But you're not saying special use like for everything, or are you? Because I heard you just say everything.
I think I
Once
would,
a
I would
zero.
defer to corners, to
Okay,
intersections.
so you're more concerned about the corner.
Oh, yes.
You're talking about intersections.
I just want to make sure, because I heard one thing and,
Okay. Sorry I wasn't clear. Tim's exactly right. In the middle of the block, it's not an issue.
Right.
It's the intersection for turn.
Intersections, it's an issue.
I think it'd be an easy change to have the 0 lot line at intersections for a special use permit, because then it can be reviewed individually, because maybe it's in whatever design they have, talk about a certain maybe building design that
That was,
doesn't actually have a site distance issue, so it can be, and they can submit, or they could submit an actual rendering to show what it would look like. And in their defense, like, we had those 3 building permits at Market and Main, or Market and Front, basically, and then up to Main, where we didn't realize it was a site distance issue until the 3rd one was already built, because we got them at 3 different times.
sure.
But there would still be one more intersection there that would be part of the overlay district now.
Yeah.
That you could do something about that. I
Or is
mean,
there,
a little bit.
unless there's already a
Yeah.
permit there.
Yeah, but they could apply for it and just say, well, if they have to get a special use permit, but maybe the justification for adding it on the 4th side is that it's already got a 4-way stop. So we could review it on a case-by-case basis and make sure that the traffic,
I'm just saying, if it didn't, that would be then
Right.
a open corner.
Operate on the exception rather than making it the rule.
Right.
I like that.
I think that would be a very easy change to the code to require intersections to be special use permit to be able to review site triangles.
I like
It's
that.
like right now, the library would be open.
Yes.
Let's see us expanding the library to the curb.
I wanted to talk to you about that monument. That's in my way.
Well, we'll have to talk about
We
that.
do have some
So-
problems in town with signs and,
Well,
know,
that
in
was
those
my
areas
next
that you
question.
can't
We
see.
talk about buildings.
Or
What
roofs.
about landscaping, trees and that type of thing?
So right now, anything that is, in every zoning district, it mentions the site triangle where, like, if someone were to put landscaping up or a sign or fencing, the traffic committee has the authority to say, hey, this is a traffic hazard.
Okay.
That's
And
happened
some
before.
of that, I guess, is complaint-driven, if,
It
like,
is.
in a neighborhood, because,
So like, a great example is, we don't require we don't require any permits for fencing unless they're 8 feet tall. So people put up fences all the time without us knowing. But if someone puts it, say they have a corner lot and someone
Right.
puts it in the site triangle, we have the authority to say, hey, look, this is blocking site distance, causing an issue there. I think the alternative when it comes to a building permit, we can't issue a building permit and then say it's causing a site distance issue. So this would cause that review beforehand.
So at your Thursday review meetings or whatever, that would you, are you?
Yeah, I mean, these are all, any permit would obviously go to that, but it'd be very easy, any special use permit request we got for a zero lot line in this area on an intersection to bring it to the traffic committee as well. I mean, they meet monthly, so I think that's
I think that would work.
Would
I
they
think
be a
that's an easy
compromise?
I think
change
it's
and-
reasonable, and
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to address the concerns.
Think about the intersection of Main and Jefferson for a moment. If you're coming west on Main Street from Market, and there's a zero setback building in that corner, and people are zipping up Jefferson on oncoming traffic southbound, you have a very poor, you're having to get out into the street before you can negotiate a left turn. And what we're doing, you're engineering in problems.
Same thing on Third? No.
Pick your intersection.
Yeah, the next one up, you had the shop there on Jefferson. And you're always
Second?
trying to look around to get out and get on
Studerman
Jefferson.
Michelle is the same way.
Yes,
trust
that's a
me.
horrible
That's a
one. I didn't realize
horrible
how bad that
intersection.
intersection was
It
till
is
lately.
terrible, and I've complained about it.
Studerman and
Oh, it's terrible.
Michelle? Studerman
Well, you've
and
got that
Michelle.
curve
Where's
right
Mich-
there.
Oh, yeah.
If I stop at the stop sign, you can't see anything
Yeah.
coming down the hill.
You got that curve right
Well,
there.
what should we do
Sounds
about
like we
that?
have a plan.
Do we
So
have a
it's-
plan? Are
I
we
think the
good?
motion would be to amend it to add a special use permit for zero lot lines at intersections in the overlay district.
I'd move that we do that.
Second, oh,
All those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for your help.
Thanks for help. Thanks for helping out.
We will see a copy of that then to review for sure.
Now,
So
are we ready to go to council? with
No.
this? Yeah, this is just, I was going to say,
So-
we're not, what?
Two
I
reasons.
wanted to make sure of that.
Two reasons I didn't write it, I didn't do a public notice in the paper yet, because since we're amending the code, we have to notice in the paper before council does it. And
This was just a talk
I
about.
wanted to make sure we weren't going to have any changes before I wrote that. And so I would assume we'll do the second meeting in July. So we actually do have one more chance to review it here.
Okay. And then
Okay.
Sal, I think, and this wasn't in the motion, but I thought from our discussion it was clear, we're going to take out that C1
Correct.
paragraph also.
Yes.
Yes.
About the no residential on the first floor.
Is the first meeting in July on the 6th?
I'm sorry?
It's Monday,
Yeah, so
the 5th? Okay.
council is going to
I
meet on a
just wondered.
Tuesday. I mean, as full disclosure, I am gone all next week, so I'm not going to put anything on that first council meeting for zoning purposes or any planning and zoning purposes. So then we'll go to the second meeting in July, which means I will have this code changed for us to look at in the packet.
So it'd be on the
Sounds
12th at our meeting and then go to council on the
Be on the
19th.
12th, aren't we?
Correct, yeah. 12th of July for P and Z, 19th for the approval at.
And then you'll do the public hearing and then,
Yeah,
at that.
public hearing there, and ideally, we'd pass the ordinance the same night, but I guess if they have changes, then we'll.
okay.
Mark, do we technically need a public hearing here as well, or it's just count, that's what I thought?
Just council.
That's good.
Well, this worked out.
Any other business, Sal?
No, so, our department heads are submitting budgets, this week, and so I did reach out to PJV for, some packages, just to get a ballpark of what to put in the budget. I mean, to get something substantial, 285 pages last time, and all the meetings and interviews they did. I think last time it was upwards of like $50,000. So that's kind of the price range I'm doing right now. It's something you do every 10 years. Right now, I'm sure y'all are aware, our comprehensive plan is just a 300-page PDF. It's not that user-friendly, and you can't even search it. You just have to know what you're looking for. I just know that the roadmap page is on page 75, that kind of thing. So,
Is that based on just the type of PDF that was created?
yeah, because that was the final product they
10
gave
years
us. It
ago,
wasn't.
I guess that was.
Gave us the booklet.
It wasn't, actually put into like the new type PDF where you can search it. But PJV said obviously that's a concern that a lot of cities have had, so they have some options now where they're interactive comprehensive plans that live online, that I'm looking to see if that's substantially more or not. But either way, once I get that, I'll be discussing that in July with everybody. because our budget year starts in October, and then we're gonna, the goal is to do that in '22, so in '23 that it's fresh. We're not waiting a year, so.
Oh, and Sally, I assume we're going to interview different firms, right?
Oh, yes, I just needed a.
Just a ballpark
yeah,
on
so-
price.
The yeah, I just needed a placeholder for that much, so especially that much,
He needs the budget.
we have to go out for proposal. Go out for proposal, we'll be able to interview firms. The Lang Gang group, who did it last time, they're actually no longer in business. And so I actually was struggling to find some St. Louis companies, so we'll probably send that out. We'll probably be interviewing some
They were strange.
regional groups, so.
They gave us all pens. It's exciting.
Very good.
I'm also, not that it really does planning and zoning, but we decided, I got some budget numbers back. I think we're going to do a labor market analysis as part of this study with it, because we really, that's the main concern we're hearing. So there may be some additional items that weren't related to economic development that weren't necessarily in the last study.
Doesn't Ameren do one?
So they used to do it individually with the city. You could split it with them. Now they do it county by county for free, and they release it every other year. So there is one coming out in '21. I will tell you from just the group I spoke to on the phone today, it's a lot more intensive for only like $5,000 for what some of the examples they showed from other communities. I thought that was a pretty decent price for a study like that. They survey all your biggest industries, figure out where their employees are going to, living, that kind of ratio and all that. So that'll probably be something we'll try and do all at the same time.
Yep.
Good.
Any other business? Entertain one last motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Too bad.
I might make it Star Trek.
All right. Okay. So anyway, if you lose your credit card,